So there's a report out yesterday from the NFL Network. Ian Rappaport said the following: the Jets are planning to complete their evaluations of the top quarterbacks in the NFL draft before making any decisions on Sam Darnold. That includes pro days and interviews. While they've received real interest in Darnold, they want to get the full quarterback picture first. So there's a lot with what Rappaport is reporting there. But I don't think any of it is that newsworthy. If you've been paying attention to what the Jets have said this entire time since they introduced Robert Saleh as their head coach, they have told you they like Sam Darnold, but they have not committed to Sam Darnold long-term, nor should they. See, the last thing the Jets should do is say Sam's their guy, then they end up trading him. That would make no sense. But what they should do is exactly what they're doing. Evaluate the quarterbacks that are coming out. There's no decision that needs to be made on Sam Darnold right away. Don't let the Eagles trading Carson Wentz make you feel as if you got to rush to trade Sam Darnold. It's not like the Texans are trading Deshaun Watson at any point soon. So if you're the Jets and you want Watson, which I believe the Jets need to do whatever it takes, to try and land him, you don't need to rush into trading Sam Darnold when Watson's not even being made available yet, and he might not be made available. We'll see how the Texans want to handle this situation. So you look at the Jets' circumstances here. I don't think it's that hard for them to figure out what they should do with Sam Darnold. They should trade him. It's obvious. And I love Sam Darnold. But let's break down, the situation here. Sam Darnold's going into year 4. Sam Darnold, if you compare him to any of these rookies coming out, let's say, they're around the same talent level, right? You compare Sam to Zach Wilson, compare him to Justin Fields. Well, if they're close, then the tie goes to the rookie quarterback. The tie goes to the guy that would be on the rookie contract. As much as I love Darnold's talent, you're risking a lot banking on him being great in year 4 when he has not been great through 3 years. And he was really bad in 2020. In fact, I would say he regressed from what he was after his first 2 seasons in year 3. Keeping Sam's too big of a risk when you're picking second overall. So it's actually a very easy decision for the Jets. The Jets have 2 options in my mind. Either trade for Deshaun Watson, which is what I believe they need to do, even if it means trading 3 first-round picks, it's worth it. Or you're drafting a quarterback. The idea of keeping Sam and trading down, while that sounds appealing to get extra picks, if you don't have a quarterback in this league that can play at an elite level, you're not winning a championship anyway, no matter how good your roster is. It doesn't matter if you have a great overall roster and you get all these picks. If you don't have the franchise quarterback in place, it doesn't matter. You're the Chicago Bears with a good roster and a bad quarterback. You're the Vikings with Kirk Cousins, a good roster and a bad quarterback. You're not winning unless you have an elite level quarterback. Banking on Sam to end up being elite is too big of a risk when you're sitting there with the second overall pick. It's too big of a risk. If the Jets were picking middle of the pack, if they were the Washington football team, if they were the Bears, then yeah, it makes some sense to stick with Sam and build around him. Not when you're picking second overall in what's considered a loaded quarterback class. So the Jets are going about it the right way. Joe Douglas has been smart here. You also could drive up Sam Darnold's trade value by just allowing a market to develop for him. Don't rush into anything. If you're the Jets, you still have to talk to Zach Wilson. You still have to talk to Justin Fields. Go to their workouts. Go to their pro days. Get to know the player. There's no reason to be overly aggressive now when there's no rush. There's no rush to trade Sam Darnold. So the Jets are going about it the right way. But it's, to me, an easy decision. As much as I love Sam, it's too big of a risk when you're picking second overall to not take one of these quarterbacks. Yesterday on the show, Jet legend Nick Mangold joined us, and I thought he made a great point. So I asked him about picking a quarterback second overall or sticking with Darnold, and listen to Nick Mangold break down the decision, but why he's confident Jets GM Joe Douglas will end up making the right call.
Well, I think the biggest thing, no matter what they do at quarterback, you hit the nail on the head with the receivers and offensive line. Those things need to be bolstered no matter who's back there. But the one thing, and I mentioned this earlier about Joe Douglas being here, he knows what he has in Sam. And that's something that gets me excited, is that he knows what he has. It's a known commodity. If we had a new GM coming in who wasn't familiar with him, that might make things a little bit more difficult. But, Joe's been there. He's been see him, at walkthroughs, at practice every day. So he knows what he's got. And I think that makes his decision a little bit easier for him to say, hey, listen, I know this is the guy that can lead us if we put the right pieces around him.
The writing is on the wall that Darnold's gone. Because when push comes to shove, what are the chances that the Jets stick with Darnold? Well, the only way that happens is if they genuinely believe Sam is that much better than any of these quarterbacks coming out. And do we really think that's possible? Right? If Sam was that much better than Wilson or Fields, you would stick with him. But he's not going to end up being that much better than those guys when they get through the evaluation process. It's just not going to happen. This draft class is considered too talented. So the tie would then go to the rookie on the rookie contract. Sam is going into year 4. You have to worry about his 5th-year option, which would guarantee him $25 million. The Jets aren't going to be comfortable paying that for an unknown at this point. And the Jets have failed Darnold. Make no mistake about it. I think Sam will go somewhere else and have success. But when you're picking second overall, you can't take the chance of that being the case. You have to reset the rookie clock on your quarterback. You're picking second overall for a reason, and you got to draft one of these studs, either Wilson or Fields. And right now, I think if the Jets don't trade for Deshaun Watson, I think it'd be Zach Wilson out of BYU. The tiebreaker goes to the rookie on the rookie contract. And you also have to remember this. Sam Darnold was not drafted by this Jets regime. Joe Douglas got here after Sam Darnold had already played a year in the NFL. So as Nick Mangold talked about there, Joe Douglas knows everything about Sam. He knows whether or not he could be the guy if they wavered on their thought. When Joe first got here, he called Sam Darnold untouchable. Said he was going to be a franchise quarterback. Now all of a sudden, Douglas has had 2 seasons of watching Darnold. He could decide if it was truly all the bad coaching and the lack of weapons and bad offensive line, or is part of it just Sam not being as good as they thought he was going to be? And if the tie is between Darnold and the rookie, they're around the same talent-wise, then guess what? You go with the rookie. So the writing's on the wall, Darnold's a goner. Because once again, the only chance Darnold's back is if the Jets evaluate these quarterbacks coming out and they think Sam is head and shoulders better than them. And I doubt that to be the case. So the question for the Jets is this: what happens with Sam Darnold? Well, they don't need to do anything yet, as we talked about. But I suspect if they're going to trade Darnold, it would happen before the draft. Maybe a week before the draft, 2 weeks before the draft, once the Jets finalize their evaluations of these quarterbacks. So you're picking second overall. You don't have to trade up. Like the Jets did to get Darnold, they moved up from 6 to 3, hoping that a quarterback they like would be there. And they got lucky. Jets are sitting there second overall. They know Lawrence is going 1. So they get their pick of the litter of any other quarterback. That's incredibly valuable. You know, when they trade Darnold, I think they get at least a second-round pick for him. So if you're the Jets and you don't trade for Deshaun Watson, all of a sudden you flip Sam for, let's say, a second-round pick, maybe a late one, depending on what his market ends up being. Then you talk about having the second overall pick, having the 23rd overall pick from Seattle. You have 9 picks over the next 2 years in the top 3 rounds, 4 first-round picks over the next 2 years. You talk about setting your franchise up for success. As long as Joe Douglas does his job and hits on his draft picks, well, then you could build up the core of the team really quick. So even if the Jets don't get Deshaun Watson, they're still in a good place for a young quarterback they were to draft. I understand the appeal of trading back, getting assets. But let me tell you, if all these teams want to move up and get a quarterback, shouldn't that be like a wake-up call to the Jets? Hey, maybe we shouldn't move down because all these teams want to move up for a quarterback. Maybe that's a sign that these quarterbacks coming out are pretty good, right? If there's like 4 or 5 teams that want to move up to try and draft Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, shouldn't that tell you, if you're the Jets, hey, we should probably just take this guy because he's pretty good if all these teams want him? That's the other factor in all this. The Jet fan that wants to trade down to get more picks doesn't realize the risk they'd be taking running it back with Sam Darnold. Because even if you run it back with Darnold and he's not good next year, the Jets will not be a 2-win football team a year from now. They just won't. They'll be 4-12, 5-11, not picking high enough to get a quarterback. They are bad for a reason. Adam Gase maybe did them a favor with how bad they are if they end up getting it right at the quarterback spot. Or they end up taking that second overall pick and using it in a trade for Deshaun Watson, which should be the #1 goal for the Jets before they do anything else. If you can't get Watson, Then you look at the draft. But option 1, trade for Deshaun. Option 2, draft a quarterback. I don't see a path for Sam Darnold remaining the Jets starter in 2021. As far as where Sam could go, I'd love to see him in Washington. I think he'd be perfect on that team. I think Sam Darnold could have a lot of success in that division. It's not very good. Eagles are in flux. Giants are still building. Cowboys have their issues. I think Sam Darnold could shine in Washington. I'd love to see him go there. I think Sam Darnold playing with Kyle Shanahan would be a lot of fun. Excuse me. But I don't see that as a fit because I think Jimmy Garoppolo at this point is significantly better than Darnold. That wouldn't be an upgrade. So I think he could rule out the Niners. Another team for Sam could potentially be the Bears, but we'll see what they want to do after they missed out on getting Carson Wentz. You look around the NFL, there's some teams for Sam, but the Jets need to be patient here and just see if his market develops. What if Pittsburgh moves on from Ben Roethlisberger? Could they be in on Darnold? I think that makes some sense. You know, Adam Schefter talked about a late one the Jets could get for Sam. Pittsburgh falls in that category after making the playoffs. New Orleans, we're still waiting on that Drew Brees announcement. Could they be in on Sam Darnold? I think that could make some sense if they don't want to bring back Jameis Winston and they still would have Taysom Hill there. There's teams for Sam, but the Jets are sitting there second overall. Got to take a quarterback if they don't trade for Deshaun Watson. 800-224-2004. So I throw it out to you. Should the Jets stick with Sam Darnold at quarterback? Agree or disagree? What do you think Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh should do?